Yes, so we talk about the running backs being really deep, but obviously you're going to end up in 3rd and 5. You're going to end up in 3rd and 6 at some point. So drops back, play action pass, looking for an open receiver. Who is his go-to guy on a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 out there at receiver? And then also, who's the long distance guy on this team? Who do you see being the long distance receiver to just take the ball to the house, running 30 yards down the field and taking the ball to the house? Who are your what receivers should we? Let me put it this way: what receivers should we be looking at, and what can we expect from those receivers? Short yardage passes, long passes. Who are our breakout guys there?
Awesome, Joe. Yeah, I got you. I think that at the wide receiver position, if you're talking conversion down situations, possession guys, then kind of move the markers for you, whether it be in the red zone or those third down, short yardage to go situations, whether it be on third or fourth down, those conversion downs where you really need to make a play, right? And, I talked earlier about comparing this 2023 offense. I think it's going to resemble that 2016 offense, right? And that 2016 offense, I talked about that offensive line. It was really strong. They had a great rushing attack. Wendell Smallwood led the Big 12 in rushing that year. Skylar Howard had a great rushing year of his own, over 500 yards rushing, but he also added over 3,000 yards passing. And I think that's because the run game was such a threat. So you got to hope that if with the run game being a threat this year for West Virginia, that they're able to have those guys to make plays in the passing game. And when you look at that 2016 offense, they really made a lot of hay with play action deep shots once they got those safeties that stuck in with a deep threat like Shelton Gibson. And on this year's offense, I think that they're looking to have some players that can potentially have that same type of role that Shelton Gibson had that season, right? I think you're looking at Davis Mallinger, who I mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about special teams. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore for the Mountaineers this upcoming season. He was an athlete recruit, super fast. We knew that coming in, played wide receiver and, defensive back a little bit in high school. The Mountaineers tried him at the safety position, mixed results, but glad to see them trying to get him over on the offensive side where you can use one of the fastest players on the team. He's a potential there that could be that guy to fill that deep threat role. And then recently the Mountaineers just brought in a transfer. They stole from Colorado, had previously been committed there, EJ Horton. I think that's another guy they're looking at to potentially be a deep threat, a speed guy, junior wide receiver transferring over from Marshall, so staying in state, still playing for the Mountaineers. And then a couple of guys that we talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking special teams as well. Jeremiah Aaron. I think when you look at those JUCO guys, when they move into their second season, that's when they really sometimes break out. So hopefully Jeremiah Aaron's able to do that. I got high hopes for him. And then Deshaun Polk, who I talked about, it's going to be probably the kick returner for the Mountaineers. He's another speed guy that can maybe get deep on teams. But as far as moving the sticks on, conversion downs, I think obviously the number one go-to wide receiver on this team in clutch situations is going to be Devin Carter. He transferred over from NC State. He had actually committed to Penn State, so the Mountaineers stole a commit from the team. Of course, they'll be facing to open the season, and there's a lot of interesting storylines for that game aside from the rivalry. West Virginia's got some Penn State transfers on the roster, and they've got some other guys they kind of stole in the portal from Penn State, and Devin Carter, of course, being the main one of those. Really great time at NC State, and even part of last season, his quarterback was injured, so I think his numbers could have been even better, but he made the game-winning catch to beat Clemson when NC State beat Clemson, and throughout the spring, he enrolled early and is factored in as the number one wide receiver for the Mountaineers. I think he is the go-to option among that wide receiver core. I think you saw him make some plays in that spring game. I think you'll see more of that this season. Downfield, short yardage, I think he'll be kind of the go-to guy for the Mountaineers there on the outside. But I think you're still looking on the other side for some guys to battle for that position at the Z wide receiver position on the opposite side of him on the outside. I think Cortez Braham is a guy that has a good chance to factor in there. Like I said, those JUCO players really do a great job in their second year. Braham going to be a senior this year, caught a touchdown in the spring game. I think he's got good potential. And then you brought in another guy from a Division II level in Angelo State in Noah Massey, who's going to be a redshirt senior for the Mountaineers, and I think has really good size, something that West Virginia hasn't had at that wide receiver position in quite some time, is a big body like Noah Massey. I don't know if he's going to play outside or inside yet. I've heard kind of mixed reports of both, but I think if you're looking at a guy that you can use as a weapon, in the red zone and on conversion downs, look no further other than Noah Massey, the transfer in from Angelo State, 6'4" and 230 plus pounds. So a great body for a wide receiver there. And then as far as guys that are on the roster returning, I think you're looking at a guy like Preston Fox. He catches everything, former preferred walk-on, earned a scholarship, rightfully so, and now heading into his redshirt sophomore season, I think he's going to get some reps this upcoming year in the fall. I don't think he's going to factor in for the Mountaineers. And then, of course, Grayson Malashevich in the slot, and then Jarrell Williams, a redshirt freshman, redshirted last season, may try and earn some reps there as well. But those are the kind of the guys that are already on campus for the Mountaineers. But then looking to the future, Rodney Gallagher, of course, is the name that's going to be on the minds of Mountaineer Nation the most. One of the highest rated recruits in program history coming in. So certainly high expectations. I've tried to do a little bit on our channel to tamper those just slightly because it's just hard for players, especially at skill positions, to factor in heavily as true freshmen. I've compared it to Tavon Austin. He had a couple touchdowns as a true freshman, but his reps were minimal. But when he got in there, he did make a play, and you could see that the flashes that he was going to be a great player. And I think with Rodney Gallagher, you'll see that this upcoming season. But I certainly think that he's going to be in the competition to start in the slot for the Mountaineers at the wide receiver position or the H receiver position there inside. And then Traylon Ray, let's not forget about him, another 4-star recruit coming in at the wide receiver position that'll probably factor in as reserve at one of those outside spots. But of course, Gallagher is who we're most looking forward to joining the Mountaineers in the next couple of weeks and seeing what he can do in fall camp. And whether he ends up as a starter or not, they're certainly going to have packages for Gallagher. And I'd be remiss if I didn't go back. We talked about special teams earlier, but that's another return man the Mountaineers could factor in. So a lot of new faces at the wide receiver position as you're essentially wholesale replacing your 4 starters from last season as you lost Prather and Reese Smith to the transfer portal and Bryce Ford Wheaton and Sam James to graduation. But I think, through both JUCO players that were already on the roster and young players that were already on the roster, and then a pretty good job in the transfer portal that's going a bit unheralded there with the addition of Devin Carter primarily. And then, of course, we've talked about Jashawn Polk, etc., and EJ Horton, Noah Massey. I think that those are unheralded additions. And then, of course, Cole Taylor, who we talked about the tight ends, is going to factor in there. But talking about wide receivers, I think those are kind of the names to watch out for if you're looking around Mountaineer Nation.